Good evening. Welcome to members and the general public to this evening's Economy, Regeneration and Development Committee. My name is Anita Leech and I'm the chair of this committee. I'm just going to read out a webcast notice. This meeting will be webcast and a record retained on the council website. For those at home viewing the webcast, I would like to inform you that if you look above the video, you will see a resource tab. Select this and a link to the agenda will appear in the right-hand side. This will allow you to open the agenda in PDF form and follow the discussion and the debate. Can I ask members and attendees to turn off their cameras and microphones until asked to speak? I believe this evening that Councillor Povall does have a problem with her camera, so we will only get her voice this evening. Thank you. Mr McCaw, could I ask you to take a roll call of members, please?
Yes, Chair. Members, can I ask you to turn your cameras on and then speak when addressed, of course, excepting Councillor Povall. So, Councillor Bird.
Good evening.
Councillor Burgess-Joyce.
Good evening, Phil.
Councillor Gardner.
Good evening, Councillor Andrew Gardner here.
Councillor Greaney.
Good evening here.
Councillor Hayes.
Good evening, Councillor Hayes here.
Councillor Jones.
Good evening, Councillor Jones.
Councillor Mitchell.
Good evening, Councillor Dave Mitchell.
Councillor Povall.
Hello, good evening, Councillor Cherry Povall present.
And Councillor Stapleton.
Councillor Stapleton present, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Leech. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Phil. I've been made aware of apologies for absence for Councillor Andrew Hodson, and we've got Cherry Povall here deputising for him, so welcome to Cherry. Do we have any members' declaration of interests at all? No? Okay, agenda item 4, the minutes on pages 1 to 4. I'm happy to approve the minutes of the meeting of the Economy, Regeneration and Development Committee held on the 27th of October. Can I have a seconder, please?
Happy to second them, Chair.
Thank you, Tony. Can we agree that by assent?
Yes.
That as a yes? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, agenda item 5 then, public questions. I've been notified that we do have a question from David Maguire, the CEO of Wired. Mr Maguire, can I check that your microphone and camera are working, please?
Yes, they are. Can you hear and see me?
I can see you now. Thank you, Mr Maguire. Thank you for joining the committee this evening. You have 2 minutes to ask your question.
Okay. How have Wirral Council, in relation to the Birkenhead Town Centre Development and Demolition Plan, specifically considered the future of the shop mobility service in the discussions and actions to date that Wirral Council have participated in? And can you provide the name of the meeting/meetings, the date of the meeting/meetings, and copies of any documentation or meeting minutes that relate to these discussions and actions?
Thank you very much, Mr Maguire. Just to let you know that because you're asking for information about meetings, etc., it's actually classed as FOIable. So what I've been asked in my response to you today is that I've been asked that this is in effect a request for information under the Freedom of Information Act, and I've therefore asked officers to refer the query to the information management team to respond in accordance with the applicable timescales. I would say that obviously those timescales are of a certain time, but we'll hopefully get that response to you with as soon as we possibly can. Did you have a supplementary question at all?
No, thanks.
Okay, can I just thank you for the valuable service that you do offer to Wirral Council, and thank you for taking the time to send a very detailed email to us this evening at 15:49. I have read the email, but I haven't looked into all of the correspondence attached in the zip file. but I'm sure over the next couple of days that members will get to read all of that information.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay. Thank you again. Bye-bye now.
Bye now.
Okay, thank you for that. So statements and petitions, I've been advised that we don't have any. Questions from members, I've been advised that we don't have any. So the next agenda item in your papers is the revised statement of community involvement, which is on pages 5 to 170 of our packs. I have been advised, it's been brought to my attention by the council officers that this week that the government has published new regulations which make changes to consultation arrangements in respect of the sustainability appraisals prepared for local plans, which will need to be reflected in the revised statement of community involvement. On the basis of this, the Director of Regeneration and Place, Alan Evans, is therefore withdrawing the report, and members are therefore asked to note that a further report will be brought to the next convenient meeting of this committee, and further updates of the draft statement of community involvement to take account of the new regulations. I'm happy to accept this as making perfect sense to do so. Can this be agreed by assent, members?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay,
Agreed.
thank you. Thank you very much. As I say, that will be brought back to us at a point in time as soon as we possibly can. If that you do have any subsequent questions for officers, please feel free to make those questions known to them. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the planning enforcement policy, which is pages 171 to 188 of your agenda pack. We've got Kath Lawless, who's actually present on the call this evening, but Matthew Neal, the Principal Solicitor, is going to present the report. So can I ask you to present that report, please, Matthew?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm sure that members will agree that there is a need for a well-regulated planning enforcement system which manages development effectively for the benefit of local communities. As the report indicates, the Council last approved a planning enforcement policy on March 2009, so the Council's enforcement policy is certainly in need of an update. The planning enforcement policy needs to be considered in the context of the revised overarching enforcement policy that was approved by Cabinet in July 2020, relating to all of the various regulatory functions of the Council. The draft revised planning enforcement policy, which is appended to your report tonight, is intended to build on the overarching enforcement policy and provide a greater level of detail in terms of the Council's treatment of planning enforcement issues, having regard to the Council's resources that are at its disposal. So it sets out the process the Council will follow investigating allegations of breach of planning control and the process involved in seeking a resolution where a breach is identified. In terms of the revisions to the policy compared to the policy that was adopted in 2009, provides a clear insight into what planning enforcement is, what it seeks to achieve, endeavours to provide a clearer picture to stakeholders of what they can expect from the Council when they're involved in a planning enforcement matter, sets out in more detail the process to be followed when a criminal offence is suspected of having been committed, and provides an explanation as to why it might not be expedient to take formal action against a breach of planning control. So the intention is for the policy to be reviewed every 3 years. It was considered by Planning Committee last in January 2020, and Planning Subcommittee in 2020, and there were some minor amendments made to the policy, as referred to in paragraph 8.4 of the report. As members will see, the policy itself categorises enforcement cases into 5 priorities, and it also sets out 6 milestones for dealing with a breach of planning control as well. The first one being that the development does not require planning permission. Second milestone, attempt to achieve a resolution of an identified breach of planning control by negotiation without the need for a formal action. Third milestone, secure the submission of a retrospective planning application aimed at resolving the breach of planning control. Fourth one, establish that the time limit has passed, so that may be the case in certain cases. The fifth milestone, determine that it's not expedient to take action, and the final one, a formal notice is issued to the various milestones. So, in terms, I'll say no more apart from for members of the recommendation that the revised planning enforcement policy, as set out in the Appendix 1 to the report, be adopted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Matthew. Are there any questions for Matthew? Steve Hayes.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, in the report in financial implications, section 4, section 4.1 and section 4.2, 4.2 states that if either resources available to the council to deliver the enforcement service were to change, or the volume of enforcement inquiries received were to significantly increase, an early review would be undertaken. Now, could be some new planning changes, and we don't really know how that's going to affect enforcement. But I was wondering whether any consideration has been given to at what point would you say, you know, we can't cope? Has there been any thoughts into a level of sort of enforcement inquiries per year whereby you might feel the need to increase the team if necessary?
Matthew, I don't know whether that's one for Kath.
Indeed, Chair. I'd suggest I'll defer to Kath Lawless on that.
Okay, Kath, could you come in, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the issue in relation to resources is kept sort of constantly under review. One of the things that we're just about to do is report the number of enforcement cases and our sort of how we monitor against the targets to Planning Committee on a quarterly basis. And the first report for that will be going to the February meeting. And that will allow us then, I think, to track better how the number of cases are coming in and the level of resource. There is a difference between the number of enforcement cases and the should we say seriousness or severity of those cases, but I'd say we are keeping it constantly under review, and obviously enforcement is part of the whole development management service, so we can employ services wider than just the enforcement team to, and employ various planners to look at serious cases. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Kathy.
Thanks, Kath. And Steve, I think that covers your question, doesn't it?
Yes, thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. I can't see any other hands up. So as Matthew said, the recommendation is on page 171 of your pack, which is recommended that the revised planning enforcement policy as set out in Appendix 1 to this report be adopted. I can move that. Can I get a seconder, please?
I'm happy to second that, Chair.
Okay, can I take that by assent, committee?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you. That's great. Thank you very much. So our next agenda item is agenda item 8, which is pages 189 to 198 in your packs. This is the Regeneration Development Committee budget consultation. And if I could invite Alan Evans, Director of Regeneration and Place, to present the report. Karen Page, the Senior Financial Business Partner, is also in attendance if needed. Thank you. Alan, can we have your presentation, please?
Thanks, Anita. Phil's going to just introduce the report as a Director of Law and Governance, so if that's okay, I'll come in after Phil, Anita.
Yeah, I apologise. I forgot that you were going to do that, Phil, so yeah, please do so.
Yeah, nearly got out of that, Chair.
You did nearly, yes.
Thank you. I thought it just helpful, particularly for any public watching, just to describe the process and what members are being asked to do this evening, because it is different from what would normally be asked of a committee. This year is a truncated year and things have gone through at a tremendous speed in part because of remote meetings, but also because the council changed governance systems at the end of September. And so the normal work of a committee to build up over the year recommendations on the budget, implementation plans, all that sort of stuff had to be done in an extremely short amount of time. That meant that the members of this committee put in their comments to Policy and Resources Committee by way of a workshop, which that in itself is normal because that allows for blue sky thinking and private discussion, but very often would then be brought forward to the committee for ratification and putting that forward. But the timescale just didn't allow for that this year. So those comments went into Policy and Resources Committee. They are charged with putting the balanced budget together and put out various proposals for consultation to be able to build up the council's budget. That's out at the moment for public consultation. But of course, this committee hasn't had the opportunity to put its stamp and thoughts on that process. So what's being asked this evening is that members make those comments that they wish to make to Policy and Resources Committee, that can be collated this evening and will be put through. That will be quite distinct from the public consultation, so that information isn't all with you at the moment. This is simply from your view. Now, of course, that means that some members will be looking at the budget several times and in several different places with different hats. And of course, each time you see it, that will mean you will have a different set of information before you, different evidence upon which to weigh your thoughts and comments. And therefore, I will have been asked the question, does that create any problem for members? And the answer is no, because you are being asked to look at things from very particular angles. So here it is as a member of this committee. For those of you on Policy and Resources, it is the whole council picture and in formulating the budget. And then, of course, all members will have that opportunity to debate and vote on the final budget at council when everything will be before you and those discussions happened in the groups. However, of course, being me, I would say that throughout this process, all members have a fiduciary duty to the borough as a whole, and there is that overwhelming requirement to have a balanced budget at the end of it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Phil. I think Councillor Bird has a question for you. Councillor Bird?
Yeah. Hello. Thank you very much. As you say, it's a very fast moving situation and it's kind of truncated year. And I'm wondering, since these papers have been written, are there any updates, particularly on the amount of budget gap there may be? Because some reports have referred to 16.5 million and the savings put forward amount to 10 million.
I'm sure Finance and Alan can make some pointed comments, but of course one of the pieces of information that isn't with you here and now is what money we're getting from the government as a council, because that final settlement has not yet been agreed. We have estimates and a fairly solid indication, but that announcement has not been made yet. And similarly, this council is in a position where it has applied to the government for a capitalisation directive, in effect a loan to cover off the extra spending that the council undertook to deal with the coronavirus pandemic. And the Treasury have not yet responded with their decision. So there is a number of pieces of information missing, and that's why this committee is being asked to make its comments rather than formal votes and all the rest of it, although it's free to do so because it's based on that information.
Thanks, Phil. Councillor Bird, would you like to come back with a supplementary?
Yeah, just thanks. Just to note the disappointment that we're operating with still known unknowns. We were hoping to have a figure from the government last year, and we're still waiting for that. So it's very difficult to make decisions about savings, which some people experience as cuts and so on. But thank you for the update.
Thank you, Councillor Bird. So, Alan, you didn't get away with it for too long, so over to you now. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Just to add, just in terms of Councillor Bird's question as well, so there is the other item we're waiting for as well. So the council is looking to capitalise some of its budget in the coming years, just to be able to borrow from its capital programme in order to supplement its budget. So that is authority needed from government as well. So there's a couple of things which are being weighted there. Chair, just onto the items, the budget proposals from this committee were relatively simple in respect of members will know we went through the budgets in some detail, looking at the different areas of regeneration, looking at what we currently spend in terms of regeneration. When you take off some of our statutory budgets and levies we pay to the city region for transport, then the budget for regeneration is less than 1% of the council's total budget. So we did go through those in some detail, and then we also looked at the potential for income being generated from council tax and business rates, particularly as part of the regeneration programme which this committee will oversee. So the two items put forward to committee to the workshops in the back end of last year, which had now gone for public consultation. One was around Birkenhead Market. So we took Birkenhead Market into our ownership, and we were able to look at savings which we could be released from the separate operation by integrating it properly within the council. So that was proposed as part of the discussions we had. And then also the council has a disability access budget, a DDA compliance budget, which most of our buildings we were currently occupying, although that's changing now with COVID, obviously. Majority of our buildings were already DDA compliant, so any future adaptations could be met by existing budgets, and that separate budget was no longer needed anymore. So that was put forward for consideration as part of the discussions and then the public consultation. So if that's okay, Chair, I'll hand back to you and take any questions from members on those two items, or indeed on the process as well.
Thank you, Alan. I can't see any hands up, Alan, so it looks like you've got away quite lightly here. If I move to the recommendation, members, the recommendation is the committee is invited to comment and provide feedback on the budget proposals which fall under the remit of the committee, so that those comments can be presented for consideration to the Policy and Resources Committee in February 2021. So I think that what we're saying here is that we basically agree with our initial proposals in terms of these recommendations. I'm happy to move that. Can I have a seconder, please?
Happy to second, Chair. Steve Hayes.
Thank you, Steve. Can I take that by assent, members? Yes.
Yes, Chair.
Agreed.
Thank you very much, members. Okay, if we can now move to agenda item 9, which is pages 199 to 206 in your packs. The economy.
Sorry, Chair, just before we move off the budget, could I ask about capital? Because we were discussing the revenue budget here, but I'd also like clarification on the capital budget. It was questioned by the independent external auditor, but I understand that as the capital budget has been previously agreed, this committee will just consider the relevant items to draw down as and when they are needed. Is that right?
So, yeah, for you, Chair, if I can, and I know Karen's on the call as well. So capital budget, so that programme is set, as Councillor Bird said, for this current municipal year. There is a chance to feed into that for next year. There's been lots of slippage in the council capital budget overall, which will then be reviewed. Officers have been, across the corporate capital programme, officers have been reviewing what sits in there as part of the current budget process. In effect, making the capital programme work better against our budget set for next year. So I think that's one to bring forward, bring back to committee, Councillor Bird, so we can actually look at the capital programme for next year. It is set for what expenditure is there, but that review should take place, and we should be able to, again, build that much earlier into the process for budget setting next year.
So just to be clear then, Alan, that anything that we do have in the capital budget that we do want to draw down on will come before this committee, won't it?
Yes. So there's commitments already been made through the previous governance, so that wouldn't come back if authority has already been given. But anything that goes into the new into the capital programme, which does need authority, that will be coming back to through this committee. And then just to also raise the members that anything over £100,000 would actually go to P&R, but what's in the current governance arrangements, we will obviously been trying to bring that to this committee first before it goes to P&R for you to have a say as well.
Okay, thank you very much for your question, Joe, and thanks for the answer, Alan. Okay, so moving on to agenda item 9 now. You have the work programme before you, members, on pages 199 to 206. Can I invite members to ask any questions, or if you have any comments with regards to the work programme? Okay, I don't see any hands up, so I'm going to go to the recommendation on page 199. So the recommendation is the Economy, Regeneration and Development Committee are invited to agree or otherwise determine the content of the Economy, Regeneration and Development Committee work programme, which is proposed in this report for the remainder of 2020-21 municipal year. I'm happy to move that recommendation. Do I have a seconder, please?
Seconded. Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Can I take that by assent, members?
Yes.
Read.
Thank you. Councillor David Burgess-Joyce, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Conscious about it not being included there, but do we have any update on the Freeport? Because I'm conscious that the 5th of February was the closing date for applications. I'm led to believe, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, Anita, that 10 have been put in, but there's only 7, I think, that the government's going to agree. So I'm just wondering, just a very brief update as to where we are we on track, and is there anything else we can do as a committee to sort of help you, Alan, etc. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan.
Thanks, Anita. David, good question. So lots of work being done at the moment at the city region level, because the bid would be made, any bid for the Freeport status would be made through the city region, Liverpool city region. So there has been lots of dialogue and there's been some analysis done of the best possible sites for the various different elements of what would constitute a Freeport. So there's nothing for us to do at the moment. What I'd like to do, if this is okay with members, is to bring it back for first of all, a workshop discussion to get a position in terms of what's happened at the Liverpool City region, the in principle bid if the city region chooses to make one, and then to make sure we get the Wirral content right with the support of members, and then that would be the subject to a full committee report at a later date to make any decisions that are needed. But happy to speak offline, David, and about the city region discussions that have taken place.
Just as a follow-up, Anita, just very briefly, Alan, thanks very much for that answer. I think the only concern I think we have is that we're always seen as a bit of the poor relation, Alan, in the city region, and I just wonder, because it's probably not going to benefit Liverpool as much as it would us, whether in fact we need maybe a rocket to sort of help things move along. I'm just worried. You'll know better than I do, but just worried that we're not being pushed as quickly as we might.
Yeah, and just to give you some assurance, if I can again through you, Chair, that we've done an awful lot of work here. So our Regen programme is obviously building momentum all the time in terms of the various different component parts, what we're looking to do in terms of the delivery of a local plan. But ours is a very balanced Regen strategy, so it's not just about housing growth, but it needs that jobs growth as well. So we've made sure that our key sector strengths are played into that, David, on a spatial basis as well. So I believe at the moment, in terms of the analysis that's been done, it is looking quite positive for Wirral in terms of how we feature with that. So I don't think there's anything done to be lobbying. The key thing would be to make sure we've got strength in the actual depth of the application that's made.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Thanks, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks for your question, David. Thanks for your answer. Alan, I've got Tony Jones would like to come in with his question, please.
Thanks, Chair. Just to fully endorse and support Director's recommendation that we have a workshop, albeit ever so briefly, and a full and frank information exchange with regard to the proposals for Freeports. I think it's absolutely essential we as a committee fully endorse and support that recommendation. Thank you, Chair. Thank you
very much. Okay, so agenda items 11, the Birkenhead Town Deal, and 12, Celtic Manor resort contain exempt information. The committee are recommended to exclude these items from the meeting held in public. Under Section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting during consideration of the following items of business, on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined by paragraph 3 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A as amended to the Act. The public interest test has been applied and favours exclusion. So I'm just looking to members here regarding the exclusion. I see David Burgess-Joyce, you have your hand up. Would you like to come in?
I do apologise, Anita. I'm probably going to be very annoying, but I'm just a little uncomfortable as to why we're excluding not some of the items. I just wonder if, without giving too much information, I'm just curious as to why. There might be some commercial sensitivities, and I understand that, but I think given the feeling that's been in the last couple of years, particularly over Celtic Manor, I'm just a little uncomfortable as to why that's not in the public domain and why we can't discuss that here and now, if any of the public are watching. Obviously Phil's watching because he's come on. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Phil, can I ask you to respond to that, please?
Yes, of course, Chair. It's quite right and proper that members look at these things and only go into exempt when you genuinely believe that it's in the public interest. There are two reports in the private part of the agenda. The first is about the town deal and does discuss commercial information that organisations have shared with the directorate in putting that together and how it goes forward. So we have got an obligation of confidence to them. The Celtic Manor report is exempt on the grounds of legal privilege. So there are issues that we believe may end up in court or tribunal, and therefore we are in a position of advising you as members as to the quality of those challenges and our view as your lawyers on the prospects of success before the tribunals, and therefore any information that will be shared as part of that would give away the full privilege that you have as the council. So currently it is based on advice from your lawyers, which attracts legal privilege and we believe maintains legal privilege.
Does that also cover the Tier 1 appeal for the Information Commissioner? Is that also part of that?
Yes, so Councillor Burgess-Joyce, there are two issues actually running on at the same time. One is a contractual dispute. The other is a challenge made against the council in respect of an earlier decision to keep commercial information confidential. That's based on the agreements that the council has with those who shared their information with this council. That was challenged before the Information Commissioner. That information is in the public domain. We disagree with the Information Commissioner. Question is where we go to from here and what that means, and that needs some further explanation to members, and of course takes us into that realm of the consideration of what may or may not be successful and on what basis before the tribunal, which would be held in camera.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Chair. I'm still uncomfortable, but I take the point that Phil's made. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor David Burgess-Joyce, and thanks for your response, Phil. Can I now invite Sally Shaw to present